Attention Idaho and California residents. If you're shopping for a mortgage, contact PacFi, a mortgage brokerage with the top wholesale lenders in the nation. They are committed to simplifying the mortgage process, saving you time and money. Call 858-442-7048 or visit pacfi.com. NMLS number 1462943, Equal Housing Lender. Welcome back to the Alcohol Tipping Point podcast. I am your host, Deb Maisner. I am a nurse, a health coach, a mom, and a badass. I forgot to say alcohol-free. I keep messing up my introduction. But today I have Mark Holmes with me, all the way from London, UK. And Mark is the author of The Complete Guide to Stop Drinking Alcohol. And he is a former school teacher, a registered alcohol addiction CBT therapist with a master's degree from the University of London. And he is the CEO and founder of the Addiction Help Agency. Welcome, Mark.
Welcome. Thank you very much, Deb. It's great to be here.
So did I cover everything in your intro?
Yeah, I think you did a great job there.
Okay.
I think you did me proud. Yep.
That's fantastic. So let's get in and just tell me a little bit about, who you are and what you do.
Okay. A little bit of my background. Like you said, I was a school teacher. I trained as a school teacher, secondary school, high school teacher, and I kind of worked my way up the ladder to head of department and principal, and worked overseas as well. So I had a very successful career, but I also had a pretty dark secret, and that was that I was a high functioning alcoholic, and that's that's very difficult. It's very difficult to kind of come to terms with. And I at the time, it was for a long time. I mean, it was 30 years. I was drinking and struggling to control it. And then making excuses, constantly making sorry, there's a lot of can you hear me okay? There seems
I can hear you fantastic.
Oh, so sorry. So sorry. I can hear a little bit of interference there. I just wonder whether people can hear that. Yeah, sorry. So I said, yeah, it was 30 years of drinking and struggling with drinking. But it didn't affect, well, I say it didn't affect. Because it was high functioning, I suppose I tried to hide it. I was very good at hiding it and coping with having strategies to kind of get around drinking almost, because I didn't see that there was a choice. It got to the point where my drinking wasn't optional. I think in my book I described this process where at university it was sort of any excuse for a party, and and drinking was part of the culture. And if you didn't drink, there was something wrong. And I was brought up on all the great American movies and Animal House and all those kind of college party movies were part of my culture, which might seem strange if you're sitting in Idaho right now, but it was. I felt I felt American. It was really part of my culture, and I thought that was normal. And drinking to excess, what you call binge drinking now, I mean, we didn't call it binge drinking then, we just got out of it, got wasted. I think we called it wasted. And it was part of having fun. And then you go to work and you go to a next stage of your professional life where you start using alcohol to celebrate things, the end of the week, or if there's things go wrong, then you start using it to relieve sort of pain and suffering in some way. And then it suddenly starts becoming sort of habitual. And before you know it, you're going to work, and you're coming home, and I'll have a quick glass of wine, um, and it's almost routine. And I was not. I wouldn't be surprised to say, oh, okay, oh goodness me, I've got to go to the off license now, or the supermarket to get my alcohol. It's just routine, and that's when you're kind of, it's a habit, isn't it? And so I identified these sort of stages in my life, really, for every sort of 20 years of different phases of drinking, or of my relationship with drinking, and how it kind of deteriorated. And then when I got into this struggle about how do I quit, and I suppose everyone can quit, can't they, for an hour, or 10 minutes, or
Yeah.
maybe a good minute. Everyone can do that, or a day, or a week, or a month, or a year, or 2 years. I mean, there's the actual stopping drinking actually isn't that difficult. It's stopping drinking and not having that kind of pain of urges. So it's kind of being happy sober, if you like. Anyone can be miserable sober, and we all know what that's like. And it was torturous to me. I don't even know if that's a word, torturous. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it was like torture. I used to find the cravings were so bad, I was in tears. And I used to walk for miles after work, um, I was thinking, if I get exhausted, you see, because one of my excuses was I can't sleep if I haven't had a drink. So, but if I'm really exhausted, then I'm going to sleep straight away, aren't I? And so that was one of my strategies. And I'd be coming home in tears after this walk for 5 miles in the evening. Another strategy, I recited the Bible. So I'd learn, my name's Mark Holmes. I'm not Sherlock. And I'd recite, memorize Mark of from the New Testament. I'd literally try memorizing it to try and stop thinking about drinking, because I was trying to take a higher power approach, because I was trying anything. And in the end, it wasn't a higher power. I tried the AA as well, and I went to meetings. I had a real problem with that. Standing up, and I mean, I did stand up. Hi, I'm Mark, but I didn't say I'm an alcoholic. I was like, hi, I'm Mark. How you doing? And that got more strange looks, I think, um, because I was uncomfortable with that definition. I mean, and to be honest, I still am a little bit. I still don't like that label, but I accept the high functioning alcoholic label that I was. I don't accept that now. I accept now that I'm I'm cured, if you like. I don't think we were in the sort of stone ages where it's now, when Bill was writing the big book, which is brilliant at the time, there was different science, it was different knowledge about it. And I think now we've moved on a lot. So I do think you can recover. I think you can be cured of alcoholism, but you have to you have to find the right way. For me, the right way, and it can be different for different people, but I found a solution through CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. So I underwent that, and that to me made sense. It just made everything. It found the fault in my thinking in a way, because I couldn't see what was wrong. I was rationalizing my drinking, and I couldn't see any fault with that. And I mean, I'm happy to talk about it as much as you want, but that was my way in, and that's why I became a CBT therapist, because I wanted to help other people. Once you become sober, you're so elated in a way. You're kind of really motivated. So I quit my teaching career, and I started working as an alcohol addiction counselor therapist. And I had a very well paid career before, and I was moving to something that really wasn't that well paid, but I found an enormous sense of kind of achievement, a bit of purpose, um, in doing that work. And that's how I came around to setting up the addiction help agency, and to help people with alcoholism or any addiction. and that's where I'm at today. And then I led to me eventually culminated in me writing this 375 page book, um, which has just come out, and that's looking at the sort of facts really. Um, if my education's worth anything, and my experience is, it's using my experience and saying, hold on a second, what would work? What was it that worked for me? Because if I can describe that on the page and get it down in black and white, then maybe someone else can pick that up and it will work for them. And so it's spreading the kind of message that there is a solution, and that this can work, and permanently, and you can be happy. It's not unicorns and rainbows, um, but you can. It's you can live a totally different life. My life now is totally, unimaginably different, to I was what I was having. It's like carrying it's like carrying it's like that atlas. You see the atlas with the world on
Yes.
his shoulders. Yeah, yeah. That's what I think drinking is like. You're carrying this huge weight and you don't even realize it, because you think that's normal, that everyone else is carrying the world on their shoulders. And they're not. And and all this, they call it on Instagram, don't they? Hangxiety, but that all of those kind of feelings and that anxiety that's terrible with alcoholism, um, that you think that is normal, and it's not. And so all of that disappears, um, when you get sober, and it's unbelievable. It's almost like, the shade falling from, the taking the glasses off, taking the sunglasses off and looking at the daylight. It's almost like that, because it's so different. But I mean, it's transformational, but it's when you've really done it, but that doesn't mean that you've done it. I've quit for a day. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when you've made a planned cessation program and a planned recovery. So I differentiate that from the torture that I had for weeks, months, whereby I just quit on willpower and I was suffering. That's totally different to what I'm talking about. And people don't need to suffer when they give up drinking. They don't need to at all. So I went on a bit there, didn't I?
Oh, I think that's great. You covered a lot. And so, what it makes me really curious, and what I think would be helpful for anyone listening, is maybe if you could share, I mean, because it's a 375-page book, but maybe you could share. I was thinking like something for someone who's just starting, and then maybe something for someone who is sustaining, or just kind of in the throes of it and the cravings, and then someone who is just maintaining, enjoying long-term sobriety. So if you're someone that's first starting out, what are your tips or tools?
Okay, that's a brilliant question. Okay, so I mean, first of all, I think you've got to get a good understanding. What are the facts, right? So do your research, right? You're just starting out. You with the greatest respect, you won't know the facts, and so you got to get some quit lit, some book, something. I don't care. You could get my one, which is more like a textbook, really. Than a kind of experiential book. I mean, there's other books out there that are like, so many I can't mention, but, This Naked Mind, or Alcohol Explained, or Alcohol Lied to Me, or these are very, very, the most popular books, but they're not really about the facts. They're much more experiential, and they're much more motivational. And what I try and do in my book is I'm trying to say, look, this is the good and bad stuff about alcohol, really. And I think that's really important, that you have an honest perspective on it. And so, for example, many of the quit lit books, and I think this is key if you're just beginning to consider quitting or not quitting, or you're in the early stages, is to understand the sort of nature of the beast. And a lot of these self-help books literally call it a beast. or they refer to it as, I don't know, the Wicked Witch of the East, or the Wicked Witch of the West, no, I'm serious. They do refer. You read it,
Yeah,
they read
yeah.
the book, right? They do, and I don't disrespect them, but there's no science behind anything they're saying. But in their descriptions, there's no references really. But they're doing a motivational job. They're doing a very good motivational job in many respects. But if you look at the science of it, they'll all say, they'll all say that alcohol's a depressant. You know that, Deb. Everyone knows
Hmm.
that. Every medical doctor knows that alcohol's a depressant. Well, I think the whole medical profession is crazy, because that's not the latest research. All of these books were written, I don't know, 5, 10 years ago. Maybe they weren't aware of it, but alcohol isn't a depressant. It's a biphasic stimulant sedative.
Hmm.
And I can send you the research on this. And that's really, why is that important? Is it because I know a big word? No. It's because it's the only way that giving up alcohol makes any sense. Because why would you want to drink a depressant? Just that, because that means you'd only drink if you were on a high and you wanted to come down, because that's why you'd want a depressant. And some people, do take depressants because they're, like bipolar conditions, might take a depressant to actually come down. But most people drinking alcohol, it seems to serve a whole variety of purposes. It can be a reward, it can be elatory, you can be like, oh, celebratory. We're really excited, and it can boost that mood. And why? Because it is a stimulant. And you're not crazy. People who drink are not crazy and thinking, oh, I'm getting a high from this. You wouldn't get a high from a depressant, but everyone's getting a high from alcohol. I don't need to tell alcoholics this, because that's why they're drinking it. They're drinking it because they're getting a buzz. Everyone knows that. But if you read the medical textbooks and they ask a doctor, they'll say, no, actually, it's a depressant of the central nervous system. Well, it is a depressant, right? Overall, because after the stimulant effect, there's a rise for the first 20 minutes. And then after that, there immediately follows a sedative effect, which is greater. Now, you could say overall, there's a depressant effect. And in fact, as you drink more, the stimulant effect is going to diminish, and the sedative effect is going to be greater, and you're going to have less of a high. But by then it's too late, because you've already been getting these highs from drinking, and you're like, that's just sustaining it. You think you're sustaining that high. So what I'm saying to you is, you're not crazy if you're getting a buzz out of alcohol. It's totally sensible, and it does give you a buzz. And so all of these books that say you don't, it's just in your imagination. It's in their imagination, because that's just not true. So if you're starting out on the journey, first of all, you're not mad. That's the first thing to be aware. So you just get a realistic idea, do some research, check the latest research on what alcohol is, and then you'll be better prepared to deal with the consequences of that, in terms of how you treat that. And my recommendation is, you don't just quit suddenly. Um, in my program, in my book, I advocate a sort of at least 6 weeks tapering. In my sessions that I do online for counseling, I do a 12-week program, because I find that gives you time for the tapering, and then time for the rehab, in terms of how do you cope after you stop drinking. So, I would say it can be for 10 to 12 weeks is the normal program of cognitive behavioral therapy. And that's pretty much common in CBT, whether you're doing it wherever you're doing it in the States. It's Aaron T. Beck who invented cognitive behavioral therapy. He was a psychiatrist. He was he was a psychoanalyst at one point. So he did a big switch to CBT, and inventing CBT, which is totally different. But it's short term, it's goal orientated, and it's intended to produce a lasting change. So what we're looking for the people that are just recently quitting is, I'd say, don't rush. Because what happens is if I go onto the Facebook now, Deb, if I go and look at Facebook now, because I've got all the groups there that are drinking groups, the private Facebook groups, I'm a member of all of them because I'm interested in what people's experiences are. And so often there you see, oh, back to day one. Oh, well, I'm back to day four. Oh, it's been 10 days again.
Mm-hmm.
And it breaks my heart because people are going through this cycle of repeatedly quitting, and they're never asking themselves, well, I'll tell you why it breaks my heart, because it broke my heart literally,
Mm-hmm.
because I was doing the same thing, Deb. That's what I was doing for, God knows how many years, 10 years, trying to quit and kidding myself that the next time I'd do it differently without even thinking about why it failed last time. Now, many of your listeners might have been on the dry January, you know, um, program, to say, okay, for January, we're just going to have a month off drinking. And they might have struggled with that. And about this time saying, hold on a second, why didn't that work? Hopefully that's they're kind of reflecting on it, because in the early days, what's really important is you say, right, what did I do wrong? Why if I relapsed, or I went back to drinking very quickly, what was I missing, or what was I doing that is different, or what was I doing that I shouldn't be doing? um what, instead of just repeating the same thing, you know because that's the saddest thing, isn't it? When you're just like, okay, I'll quit this time, but this time I'll really use a lot more willpower. I'll really focus, or I won't worry if my dog dies, or I really won't watch anything bad news on TV about the corona, whatever, and so it's not that. It's got nothing to do with willpower. It's got nothing to do with that. If it was as simple as willpower, people wouldn't be struggling, would they? Because actually, to actually go to work, or manage a school like I did with an alcohol problem, that takes a lot of willpower, because you've got to plan, your quick sobriety in the morning, and you've got to be very careful about what you eat, and there's an awful lot of strategies you have to use to try
Mm-hmm.
and mask that you're an alcoholic. It's a lot of extra work on top of what you're meant to be doing already. So, what I'm saying is that you're you're just starting out, you're on that journey, do your homework, right? Anything in life that's worthwhile, it takes work. If you're going to get your degree in nursing, it's going to take an effort. It's not just, it doesn't happen overnight and it's free. It takes a lot of hard work, but it's worth it, and you achieve that and you're very proud. And it's the same in working at your sobriety. It takes a lot of work, but do you want the pain before you quit, or do you want the pain after you quit permanently for the rest of your life, because you're still struggling every day with urges and cravings? And that's, I think, the choice. So taper, slow down your drinking, try and have more days off during the week. Say, okay, I'm not going to have that Friday night drink after work. Or, okay, instead of, buying a bottle of wine, I'm going to buy a half bottle. Or think of different ways you can kind of gradually limit how much you're drinking. And if you've noticed there's a pattern of events where you're drinking too much, can you avoid those events? Reconsider it. In AA, they used to call it people, places, and things. You want to avoid triggering situations. So when you think there's something that's coming up that you always have a drink, then can you avoid that? Or can you think about ways to deal with it differently? And there's the stuff in my book. There's different strategies in my book. I can go into more detail about that if you want. Um, but yeah, so tapering is the big one. Cutting down. Maybe it's a day a week. Maybe it's the volume of how much you're drinking. Maybe you just have one glass less every night. You know, think about ways you can gradually cut down. Don't do anything drastic. That's always the most dangerous thing, whether you're a heavy drinker or even if you're a light drinker. It's the softly, gently monkey. What's that one? Catch him.
Oh, I
I'm
don't
sure you know.
know.
Oh my God. Goodness me, what a terrible teacher I am. But it's softly, softly catchy monkey. There's some silly phrase about it. But basically, it's you gently go towards your goal. And you do it in a loving kindness way. You don't do it about hate for yourself. You do it because I know that times I was like, oh, Mark, you're nuts. Why can't you get your head around this? And I'd be really angry with myself. You can't do it like that. You've got to kind of try and you've got to do it from a kind of kindness, loving kindness point of way. And if you can, if you can, um, step outside yourself and look at who is the person doing that. If that makes sense. Does that make sense? I don't know.
Yeah, I do like being your own scientist.
Yes. Yes. In fact, you're the subject in the laboratory almost.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at what you're doing from like almost a parachute looking down on yourself. And you don't I don't that's got kind of sort of spiritual connotations. I must say, I must really be clear about this, that my book isn't at all secular, right? It isn't at all from a religious point of view. It's a
Mm-hmm.
secular approach. Okay, I believe in God. I'm a faith driven person, but I didn't want my book to be that, because I didn't think that would help the most number of people, the largest number of people. So doesn't involve a higher power at all. Um, but it does involve taking a kind of a meditative, mindful approach. And a big part of my book is about saying relaxation, and using relaxation to help to kind of internally balance, finding some peace within. um, and I talk about that more in the book, but not from a kind of, you don't have to suddenly start chanting. You don't have to join it. It's not a cult. I don't. There's no dancing around the fire, but it is about mindfulness, and it is about. There are some meditation techniques that I suggest that are not religious, and there's a few I suggest that are religious. Um, so I use a Catholic one, a Buddhist one, and a non-religious one, a secular approach, which was by another guy who wrote a book called The Relaxation Response, which was looking at how you can use meditation in a non-spiritual way to actually help heal things and there was remarkable results. So there's that other side to the book. So I was trying to think that the reason I call it complete is because I try to get everything in there that I thought could possibly help and definitely solve this problem once and for all. And if there's any weakness of the book, I'd say the weakness is that you've got to want to quit. And if you haven't got
Mm-hmm.
to that stage where you want to quit, then it's not really for you, this book. It's only for the people that say, oh, I've decided now, I've had enough of having enough. I'm fed up of being fed up of drinking, and I decide now I want a solution. So this is the solution. But all of the other books I mentioned earlier, which are all very good, by the way, they're great at the kind of, oh, I'm not sure if I want to stop. Is it going to be too difficult? The motivational side, the coaching side, they're brilliant. Whereas mine's more of a kind of manual, how to, once you've decided, right, this is what I want to do, then this will work. I say this will work. It's like textbook, step by step, chapter by chapter. Each chapter's got goals. Each chapter's got a summary. Each chapter's got tests and questionnaires and tools and da da da. It's very kind of scientific orientated, but it's not kind of holding your hand like the others do, much more. Or it's not about my story really. Um, there's a little bit of that, but not really. That's for another book, Deb. I'd have to swear a lot. Because
That's okay. You can be you.
but I think in a different book, I could explore, the sort of the sort of despairing side, and some of there's all different sides, aren't there, of drinking. So, but this isn't that. This isn't a personal account. So if you're looking for that kind of story, this is not it. The Unexpected Joy is by Catherine Gray, is probably better for that. Um, and if you're looking for something really just motivational, you're not sure whether you want to quit already. Um, the Easy Way, the Alan Carr book, is very good. The Easy Way to Stop Drinking, or Easy Way to Quit Drinking. That's very good at the motivational side, trying to encourage you to quit. I read that book. That was the first book I read, Deb, that made me realize that bibliotherapy could work.
Mm-hmm.
The Alan Carr, I quit drinking for 3 months after I read that. So that was a really big step for me, because I didn't think it was possible. But it wasn't a kind of long-term permanent solution. That's what I was looking for, but it was a temporary. And I think a lot of these books are a good temporary solution. They'll get you, at least they'll get your foot in the door, if you like. And that's got to be worth something. But for a permanent solution, without having to struggle with, why am I doing it? Then I think a complete guide like the one I wrote, then that's where I come in. So it is a very much a textbook for CBT, and other counselors use my book to treat patients in therapy. So it's that kind of book. That's where I'm coming from. I hope I didn't denigrate my book too much then, Deb.
No, I think it sounds amazing. I really I like your approach. You mentioned treating yourself gently, and one of the things I always say is practice, not perfection. And it
Yeah.
is possible to make progress without being perfect. And so I
Yeah.
think, yeah, you described that in your own way beautifully.
Oh, thank you so much. No, I think it's really important. I mean, that's something that kind of meta kindness way. I mean, I've
Hmm.
got a lot of Buddhist heroes, actually, and some of the Buddhist meditations in the book that I recommend are about how do we practice loving kindness for ourselves. And there was a great writer about self-compassion, which is another thing that I go on about in the book, probably too much, is that we've got to find that love for ourselves, not in a kind of grandiose, like I'm all it, way, but in a way of saying, look, when objectively, we're not the worst in the world, and we're all human, and that's the thing that unites all of us, and we've got this self-talk, haven't we? That sometimes can be really, really negative. And in cognitive behavioral therapy, we talk about negative automatic thoughts, and this is based on irrational intermediate beliefs, which are based on, you know, problematic core beliefs. And so these things that when we're rationalizing in our own heads, whatever we're doing, Debbie, always makes perfect sense. So when I'm having conversations with clients in therapy, they're totally clear that they are doing the most sensible thing at the moment in time. For them, they are convinced that what they're doing at that moment in time is the most reasonable and rational solution. Now, it's not. It's stupid. I would never say that, obviously, to a patient, but how can you justify drinking poison, right? How can you justify it? It's impossible. But we all do when we're in the throes of that condition, and I use that word decidedly, condition, when we're in that condition, then we will justify it in a million different ways. And if you look on all of those Facebook groups, Deb, you're going to see people saying, oh, it was my daughter's birthday, or, oh, I just won the lottery, or, my dog died, or there's a million reasons why people drink. And then none of them are good. I'd say there's no such thing as a good reason. There's only an excuse. And so I don't know what I'm talking about now. I've gone off the point, haven't I? But I suppose the point is about understanding where our thoughts. Remember, it's our thoughts that is where the problem is. if you look at, if you Google ABC model,
Mm-hmm.
right? If anyone's got access to the internet there, you'll see that the ABC model is, we often say something happens, right? We call it A, the activating event, and then there's a consequence. So, something happens, the dog dies, and then well, we have a drink. But between the two, there was some conditions taking place. So in cognitive behavioral therapy, we say that A, the activating event, led to B, beliefs, led to C, the consequences. So in between those two things, what our beliefs were influenced what happened in terms of the outcome, in terms of the consequence. Does that make sense? So, if something happens, I don't know, I'm late for work, and then the consequence is the manager wants to see me in his office. Now, in I could go into that meeting going, look, you know, it wasn't my fault. It was the bus. Or there was so much traffic. I couldn't. It was nobody could have got through. If you're going to give me an attitude, I quit. Right? You could go in all fired up, because why is that? Because you've got those beliefs in between that I might not be good enough, or I'm responsible for this, or I've done something wrong, or I'm a bad person, and that will influence the way the consequence, whatever the consequence is. If your beliefs were different, if you were thinking, well, actually, I didn't do anything wrong, I couldn't have done anything different. There was an explosion on the motorway. One of the cars blew up. What do you want me to do? Fly? I'm not Superman. You couldn't, and then you go into the meeting, you've got a totally different approach, and the consequence will be totally different because of your beliefs about, what happened and what you think happened, and your thoughts about yourself. So this belief system is fundamental to that ABC model. Google it. It's fundamental to CBT, and it's about identifying, are there any negative automatic thoughts or irrational dysfunctional beliefs or attitudes that may be having adverse consequences on your drinking. And so it's not just a case of don't drink because it's not good for you, because every alcoholic knows, drink it. They know so well why it's bad for you. It's amazing that they still drink in spite of that. So it's no point in writing a book saying, hey, do you know what? It's killed about 10 million people. Did you know that? Oh, did it? Oh, really? Yeah, who cares? An alcoholic will just, oh, you know what? Your leg's going to fall off if you carry on. Oh, is it? All right, good for you. All right, okay. It doesn't, there's no point in telling an alcoholic about the bad consequences about, uh, of the harm and the number of deaths and et cetera, and the liver failure and da 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 da. You know more about this than I do as a nurse, I'm sure. So, but you can't. You quote all of that, and people will be blind and deaf, and they won't notice that at all. As soon as you mention anything like that, they'll turn off because they know it. They know it. They choose to ignore the facts. And so I had to try and find a way in my book of trying to say, hold on a second, how do I explain about why do we think it's so normal? Why do we think, how does normalization happen? How does enculturation, big word, happen? How does that happen to us? How do I get to 19 where I'm getting wasted in college, drinking more than I can possibly, handle, and throwing up every weekend? Why? How do I get to that stage where that's normal? Because it is normal. I think it's normal in America. I think it's normal definitely normal. I don't know about America. Definitely normal in England. And and there's studies of that I quote in the book. I won't bore you by quoting studies in this show, because I'm probably saying you're going to go, this is a great ASMR an ASMR interview, because he just goes on and on and on.
Oh,
Sorry,
that's funny. I would be impressed if you quoted studies.
Well, there's so, I mean, look, there's 300 plus references in the book. There's nothing I say in the book that hasn't got a study attached to it, because I thought, what was I like when I was quitting drinking? I didn't believe anything unless I could look at a primary reference. And I'm not talking about quoting Alan Carr, right? I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
One of those books I mentioned, um, which is one of the best-selling books, has got over a dozen references to Alan Carr because that lady's quoting Alan Carr all the time. I'm not talking about quoting other books about giving up drinking. I'm talking about primary research evidence. I'm talking about people that have actually looked at the, experimental evidence or have done meta studies where they compare, what's happening as the result. If we look at, 100 studies, what was the conclusion from all of these studies together? This is what I'm interested in. And that took me years to get of reading through these and going, is that relevant? Would that make any difference if I was told that? Does it make sense to me now? Would clients get that? And so that filtering, I could only do that filtering, in fact, because I was an alcoholic. I couldn't have written this book if I didn't know what the pain and suffering was like, and what made sense, and what will make sense to other people when they're going through that process of trying to quit. Um, Now, I think I've given a very long-winded, general answer to your question. But in terms of people quitting now, and beginning, I'd say get a well sourced book, get a good reference, find out the facts, get a good quit lit book. And secondly, take your time to taper, and look at ways of cutting down gradually. Three, reflect on what has worked for you in the past, what works and what doesn't work. Four, try and for outside support if you can, not necessarily from peers, but there's a lot of groups online. I spoke about the Facebook group. We're both Instagrammers, aren't we, Deb?
Mm-hmm.
You've got a brilliant one. Yours is fantastic, by the way. I recommend that to everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And I'm a newbie on the block, um, but slowly growing. But Instagram's really upbeat, positive. But Facebook groups are really good because they're interactive. Um, and look at blogs. Find out there's a lot of great blogs out there, because blogs can often be a source of free inspiration. Because Facebook's free, Instagram's free, blogs are free, books you got to pay for, I'm afraid. But I'm trying to think of free ways, free sources of information, and free sources of support. Podcasts, wonderful podcasts like this. And I've got, my blog, just if I can give it a little plug,
Yeah, please.
is called Soberzine, which is addictionhelp.agency/blog. And there I got the top 10 podcasts, the top 10 sober blogs, the top 10 Instagrammers, the top 10 everything. So they're current. What I'm trying to do at the moment, Deb, is put it all into a sort of directory, a guide
Mm-hmm.
for people, so that I'm going to give it away free. It'll be a free ebook or something, but I just want to make something available that sort of says, okay, these are all the things out there that are resources. Because when you start, when you start stopping drinking, it's a bit of you're kind of walking into the unknown, and you're a bit on your own, and yet there's so much support out there. There's so much you can get access to for free, and so many people willing to help and encourage you, and give you the support you need. And I know how vulnerable it is when you first stop drinking. It's like really a bit of a yeah, it's a step into the unknown, isn't it? So if you're doing that right now, your listeners, I take my hat off to you. Because if you're doing it in any time under 30 years, you're a better person than me, because I couldn't do it for 30 years. So good luck with that. I really mean that. And there is hope, and there is a way. You can do it. You know, um, and I think that's something that people can't hear enough, because I know for me that it's impossible. I would have said, it's impossible to stop drinking. It's impossible. There's no way I'm ever going to stop drinking. And now I'm on, you know, I'm here talking about that it is. So if you can find any moment of insight. Oh, the other thing I mentioned is a journal is really useful. If you can find a moment of insight. So what do I mean by that? Is actually knowing. You know, when I said looking down on yourself, for me, the journal was my moment of insight, because I wrote in my journal one year, that's it. I've had it. This year my goal is, I'm going to not drink again, and I really mean it. And whatever happens, I don't care about, anything in my career or anything in my family. I'm not going to touch a drop. And that was my goal. And then exactly a year later, I returned to my journal to write my New Year's resolutions. And I was just about to write, this year, I really mean it. I'm not going to touch a drop. I'm serious. This year, whatever happens, my career, my family. And I saw those exact same words in my journal already there. And it was like staring myself, smack bang in the mirror and going, what an idiot you are, And then I said, right, that's it. You got a problem, mate. And you've got to, a year. And it was like, that was the message for me. So if you can find through a journal, through talking to people that, family, any kind of, any insight, that awareness that it's not you. There's something mismatch here. This is not really you, because it isn't the real you. You weren't drinking as a baby. You didn't come out of the womb like, I'll have a large one on the rocks, please, nurse. It didn't happen like that, so it's not you. So if you can find that moment of insight, or that little spark from whatever source it is, Facebook, Instagram, blogs, books, any quit lit. That's why I don't want to knock any, because if you can find that insight, then you're opening the door of just a gap. And then once you open it a gap, it's possible to open it all the way.
Well, I think that you have shared so much. I wish we had more time to talk. But you
don't want to risk another question, do you? Because
I think that I should have you back on so we can really dive in. This feels like an intro.
I'd love to.
But
I'd love to. Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely should.
Yeah.
But for today, to wrap up, how can people find you and your book?
Great. Okay. Well, they can find me with the Addiction Help .agency. So, or they can go to addictionhelpagency.com. But I did a special thing where .agency you can use as well. So addictionhelp.agency, and if you do /book, you'll find the book. If you do /blog, you'll find the blog. I've got not much imagination when it comes to things like that. So it's very easy to find. And in terms of Facebook, if you want to join my Facebook group, I'd love it, because I've got very few members at the moment. So I've only got a few. So I've got Be Happy Sober. So if you find Be Happy Sober, you'll see that's my Facebook group, and my page is Addiction Help Agency. So yeah, I'm sure if you go for any one of those, you're going to find me, I'm afraid.
Well, I will. I will put your links in the show notes for.
Oh, brilliant!
The
Deb, thank you so much, and thank you for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity to talk to you and your listeners in Idaho, and it's been wonderful. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. It's so helpful. The book sounds wonderful. I will have you back so we can dig a little deeper.
Brilliant.
In the meantime, please reach out, find Mark, reach out to me if you have any questions. You can always email me at deb@alcoholtippingpoint.com. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Alcohol Tipping Point. I'm always here for you guys, so please feel free to reach out and talk to me on Instagram at Alcohol Tipping Point, and check out my website, alcoholtippingpoint.com. Again, I hope you can use these tips we talked about for the rest of your week. And until then, see you next time.